Good morning traders, welcome to the RMD Weekly Market Overview. I'm looking forward to taking you through this week's market, and I'm pleased to announce that due to popular demand, we have decided to include the US 100, better known as the NASDAQ, in our market overview to replace the US 500. This week we also have a few exciting technical patterns in play that I trust you will find interesting. I'm going to let the disclaimer roll and we'll see you in the charts. We are starting with the US dollar to South African rand. We saw the US dollar weaken substantially against most currencies last week, with the rand being no exception, and gained a lot of strength against the US dollar, with price closing well below our target at 16 rand 90 and only coming to a halt near the yearly R2 pivot at 16.55. The current target, I would believe, would be in the area between 16.45 and perhaps 16.50. This is where our 200-day simple moving average would meet up with this lower diagonal resistance. And if price were to find some support in this area, this would mean that we are completing or forming what is called a megaphone formation. That means that after such a move, we can expect price to recover slightly higher back towards the top of this megaphone formation, where we will see resistance being tested in the area between 1685 and 1690. So that would now be an area of resistance. Worth noting that we also have immediate overhead resistance at 1677. So that would be the first area that we will need to break if we want to see the price move higher into this 16 rand 90 area. Then, of course, should we manage to break above this 16 rand 90 area with a proper close below above this level, we can see and expect price to move back higher towards the top of this larger diagonal resistance, and that would be close to $17.35. Looking now at the Euro USD, last week saw price close with a strong bullish candle on the daily, right near the weekly R1 at 1.191. The immediate area of support now becoming the area at 1.183. And of course, should we be looking for some additional bullish targets, we would need to see some more bullish price action above this area, with the first bullish target being the weekly R1 pivot at 1.95. And a second bullish target, should we be able to meet that, would be at 1.202. That would be the weekly R2 pivot. However, should we see price close back below this level at 1.183, just take note that there is also some additional support with this diagonal in orange, and that could take us a bit lower towards where we would probably or very likely meet up with our 200 SMA on the 4 hour at 1.175. And should that level also not hold, some additional strong support would be at around level at 1.170. Then just a brief look at the economic calendar for the week. Not a lot of events, but the few that are there are quite high impact. We can see that on Tuesday we have manufacturing PMIs. On Wednesday we have some GDP figures quarter to quarter, non-farm employment changes in the evening, followed by crude oil inventories. On Thursday, we have unemployment claims, and then we have the Bank of England governor speaking at Thursday afternoon. That would have an impact on the GBP. And then we have some more non-manufacturing PMIs later that evening affecting the USD. And on Friday, we have average hourly earnings, non-farm employment change, and unemployment rates at 250. So for the GBP, last week's scenario played out exactly as we hoped for, with a close above the weekly pivot at 1.313, quickly seeing price move higher towards the first weekly area pivot resistance at WR1. It was at 1.32, and shortly after that we saw a new bullish candle close above that, taking us to our full bullish target as set out in our weekly market overview video last week at 1.335. For this week, we expect the first area of the resistance to be this monthly R1 pivot at 1.337. So very close to where we closed on Friday. After this, we would probably expect a correction towards the weekly pivot at 1.325. Should this level hold and we see more bullish price action from this area, we can expect some additional targets to be, again, firstly, this monthly pivot at 1.337, so that area would need to be retested and breached. So it's also likely that we might see some consolidation between our weekly pivot and our monthly R1 pivot. However, should we manage to break above our monthly R1 pivot at 1.337, we might head as high as 1.347. So, but that will all be dependent on close above this level. However, should we manage to break below this weekly pivot and also below this immediate trend support, our first area of support would be in the area of 1.315, and then that will probably be followed by this area of support being tested, being our longer diagonal, probably very close to that level as well. So depending on how late in the week we test this, it might be anything from 1.315 to 1.319. So also take note that we do have our 100 SMA on the 4 hour that will act as additional dynamic support. And now looking at the Australian dollar to USD, we saw a very strong breakout last week with price now right up our resistance at 0.735. And at this stage, we have even broken above the bullish channel, meaning that a correction at this stage would be due to at least retest the upper section of this channel. And that could be anything from 0.730 to, depending on how late in the week we do test this level, to 0.7327. However, in the very bullish scenario where we see more relentless bullish behavior, we might even see 0.745 being tested, but I believe a correction before that is much more likely. Support will now be at 0.727, so that would be around this area over here, which was the previous swing high, and also I believe that would be the area very close to our weekly pivot at 0.729. So let's just say 0.73 would be the new area of immediate support. However, if we were to close below that, we could expect price to move lower towards 0.719, and that is the bottom of our bullish channel. So that would be additional area of support should price move back into this channel to retest the lower end of it. But yeah, best to see what happens. I think it's likely that we will just come down to retest the top of this channel. But again, if we do break into this channel, we might test anything from this middle section, which is also the previous area areas of resistance at 0.7235. But if we do break below that, the bottom diagonal will be a strong area of support, and also likely we will meet up with the 4-hour 200 and 4-hour 100 SMAs. So, as promised in the introduction, this week we will look at the US 100 as opposed to the US 500. The US 100, also known as the NASDAQ, has been a very popular asset as traded by our clients, and for this reason we will now cover it this week and on an ongoing basis from this week onwards. The NASDAQ, composed of the top 100 shares in the US index, is exceptionally bullish, with price mostly just going up with short corrections in between. And just looking at where we're currently at, we can see that immediate support at this stage would be at our monthly R2 and weekly pivots, both which are at 11,625. So should price pull back, it will likely retest this area. So this would mean a buy opportunity. So we are currently in a very strong upward trend, as you can see, with all the moving averages pointing upwards, and also currently trading in this bullish channel, as can be seen by the blue and red diagonal lines. So any pullback towards this area at 11,625 would be a buy opportunity. Then just considering our immediate areas of resistance, those would be at 12,300. That would be our monthly R3 pivot and also our weekly R1 pivot. So in a very bullish scenario where we do perhaps come back for a retest and push higher, I believe that area to take profit off the table would be at 12,380. That is the yearly R3 pivot. And at this stage, my upper target for the NASDAQ. Worth noting that should we break below this about lower diagonal and this area at 11,620, area of support would be lowered towards 11,050. So that would be this purple line over here, as that would also be the top of a larger diagonal channel extending back to April 2019. So that would be in a more bearish scenario where we break below this area of support and come to retest this area. So those would be my scenarios and my price targets for the NASDAQ. Looking now at Brent crude oil, we saw our bullish scenario play out with price hitting our target at 46.50 last week. And currently the key levels to watch would be resistance at 45.90, so that is where price is currently trading and also closed on Friday, and support at 45.50. So those would be the key levels to keep an eye out for. Of course, should we get a close later today or sometime today above this 45.90 level, our first area to keep an eye out for a price target would be the weekly R1 pivot at 46.66, followed by a potential bullish target at 47.47, and that would be our weekly R2 pivot. Just considering areas of support, should price pull back into an area of consolidation, similar to what we saw last week. The first area of support would be this area at $45.50, and of course, if we would close below that, for our 200 SMA and this diagonal would be a dynamic area of support. So anywhere on this line would be the dynamic area of support. So we could expect price to perhaps pull back to any of these areas. And only up close below this diagonal would see a more bearish scenario play out, with the 44.75 level being crucial in sustaining any additional bullish behavior, and a close below that taking us probably lower to $43. And looking now at gold. Gold has been trading in this very large symmetrical triangle for quite some time now. And on Friday, we saw what appears to be a breakout of this symmetrical triangle, which this stage does appear to be bullish. However, it's worth noting that we do have this 100 SMA on the 4 hour that needs to be contended with. We have closed right on that level. So any bullish price action from this area would take us higher and give us targets, firstly, at the yearly R3 pivot at 2050, and then taking us, to all-time highs well above the 2,100 level. So again, firstly, we'll need to stay above this level where we are currently trading. Secondly, we'll need to get above this 2050 level, and if we do manage to do that, we can see at 2,100 and above. However, should we see price move back into this triangle, we will first be testing the area of dynamic support, being the 4 hour 200 SMA, and that will likely or potentially that could happen at 1,940 level. And should that happen, we will see price move lower towards 1,920, where we'll find some support. And just looking at a very bearish scenario where we were to close below our diagonal support, that could potentially take price much lower towards 1,820. But that will become clearer if we do close below this level. So at this stage, all the moving averages, at least the 200 moving average is still pointing up, with price trading above most of the important moving averages. And as always, we conclude this week's market overview with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still struggling to get away from this 4-hour 200 moving average. The trend is still up with the 200 moving average on the 4-hour pointing upwards, and price also trading above both the 250 moving average. We are still below the 100 moving average on the 4-hour. And at this stage, I think important areas to keep an eye on would be this overhead diagonal area of resistance, which will coincide with the 100 SMA, and our diagonal area of support, which will coincide with the 200 SMA on the 4-hour. So both these levels are very important to understand where the next move of Bitcoin will go. And then, as discussed last week, the important target levels, should we see a breakout to either side, but perhaps firstly to the upside, would include the resistance now at 12,200 to 12,350. So that would be the first area of resistance, and also where we have found our, or we will find our monthly R1 pivot. And of course, should we manage to break above that, the next areas of resistance will be way above at 12,900. That would be our yearly R1 pivot. And just looking at areas of support, should we do break below our weekly and monthly pivot at 11,500. So that would be our line in the sand for a bearish scenario. So should we close below this level, it's possible that we could see price move lower towards 11,180. So that would be this area over here. That would be our weekly S1 pivot, and if that were to break, we might see 10,600. That is all the way down here with this blackish line over here. That would be our monthly pivot. And in a very unlikely event where we see a very large sell-off, I believe 10,250 to be a very strong level of support, as that was the initial breakout level if we were to look on a weekly time frame. So those would be the levels to keep an eye out for Bitcoin. Well, I trust you enjoyed this week's video. Remember to please subscribe and also to select the notification button in order to be reminded as soon as we make new content live. Also, if you're interested in trading or just want to learn more about trading, why not visit our website www.rmdtrader.com, where you can easily open an account and get free access to our trading platform and educational resources. Until next time, this is John Jacobs for RMD Trader. Trade smart and trade successful.